Well, welcome back, and thank you very much for those people that have subscribed so far. It really does help motivate me, so thanks a lot. I really appreciate you tuning in and listening to what I have to say. We're going to do more on the 911 today, the 996 variant of the 911. I'm going to tell you why I bought it, what it replaced, what it cost, what it's like, how it works, and why I think I'm beginning to call it a keeper. So stay tuned, we'll start right now. So I'm not what you'd call a Porsche fanboy. It's not something I've lusted after for a very long time. I'm not really a devotee of any brand, actually. I've had lots of interesting cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Jaguars, a couple of MGs, one I still own. If you watch the other videos in on my channel, you'll see my RV8, which I adore, and that's special for another reason, which we'll talk about in another film. I just think life is too short, and that's why it's a bit surprising for me to start thinking about any car as a keeper. And that's why we're going to talk about this car today. It's not to say that I haven't enjoyed those cars, I really have. And actually, where there has been a following, like with Land Rovers, that in the UK, when I lived back there 5 or 6 years ago, there was a huge following, and I used to go off-road in clubs and so on and so forth. The same with the VW Golf GTI that this replaced. The GTI was a superb car, actually. It was reliable, it was cheap. I paid $26,000 for it. It was fast, it had a super DSG, double clutch gearbox. A bit crashy over bumps. Round bends, there's very little that would keep up with it. And I got a lot of value out of that car. It suited me really well. So when it was time to hand that back in, I thought, well, what else could I get for similar money that gave me an even bigger bang for my buck? So I started looking around, initially at new cars. We had just bought my wife a VW Atlas, which for those of you that don't live in the US is an SUV, V6 powered SUV. And that is a really lovely modern car. But something around, the level of fun, performance, and sort of iconic nature, if you like, which is kind of what I was enjoying with the GTI. I couldn't find anything around that price point. So I started looking at older cars. Not too old. I don't want something that's going to fall apart every 5 minutes. My MG will do that for me just when I don't want it to. So I don't want a second one of those. But I started to look at Jaguars. My dad had always been a Jaguar devotee, a fan actually, a Jaguar fanboy. He had lots of them, including an XK, which I thought looked really smart. And actually when I looked for those, there were lots of them around. I had in the past a Jaguar S-Type R, which was a superb car, 400 horsepower, really comfortable. But I just started thinking maybe a Jag, I'm a bit young for that. And also it felt like going backwards, in time. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. I want to move forwards in time. So I started looking at 911s. I'd followed the history and the story of the 996 over the years and understood why people didn't like them, and really wondered whether that was actually true. But I guess like everybody, I thought, well, why go for the 996 when the 997 is there? 997 with the round headlights, a bit of a more modern look to it potentially, but still looks like a 911, right? But I thought, well, let's have a look at that. I particularly wanted a coupe. I'm nothing against Targas, convertibles, lovely cars, but for my first 911, I wanted a coupe. I just thought that looked a classic, Porsche 911 is the coupe, and quickly discovered that the 997 coupes were well out of my budget. So I was forced to start looking at 996s just because of my budget, and I quickly saw there was quite a large discount over the 997s for buying a 996. And I thought, well, how bad can it be? It's still a 911, right? It's still a relatively modern car, even though this particular one is 17 years old. So I decided, look, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to go for it. Life is too short, remember? So I bided my time. I mean, looking for a car, right, I think is actually as much fun, or nearly as much fun, shall we say, as actually owning a car. So I had around 26,000, which is the amount of money that I spent on the Golf. I didn't want to really up my budget too much. And at that price point, I found for 996s, I could be quite choosy. They start quite low, and yeah, if you want a turbo, you can pay 50, 60, 70 grand GTs and that sort of thing. But at this particular price point, I could afford to be fairly choosy. Porsche of Mobile, Alabama, advertised this car. C2, Carrera 2, two-wheel drive, 25,000 miles, and a Carfax full of regular services, oil changes, and someone had clearly looked after it during its time. It had spent most of its time in California, a little bit of time in its life in Alabama, no rust, and it had been looked after. I also wanted to buy from an official Porsche centre if I could. I just felt that the quality of the car, the service I was likely to get would be that much higher if I went with an OPC for my first 911, rather than someone maybe who sells cars. Porsche is not their main brand, and you know, someone who maybe wouldn't quite give me the service that I was really looking for my first car. Remember, I was coming out of a new car into an old car to get this one, so I went for it. I did the deal, and thank you to Brandon Cachot of Porsche of Mobile, Alabama, who is a real professional and remained positive all the way through and gave me the service that frankly I was looking for, and more, I must say. And here it is. This is my 911, and honestly I'm a little bit in awe of it. It is probably the most iconic car I've ever owned. It's my 911. So let's talk about the deal. They advertised it for $27,500. I ended up paying $26,500. That included an oil change and a new fresh set of tyres. In fact, Porsche of Mobile actually gave me two sets of tyres in the end. There was a little mix-up on the tyres that we agreed were going to be put on, and to their great credit, they gave me the Michelin PS2s, brand new, that are on the car now, and a set of Pirelli winter tyres. So I'm all set there. In Connecticut here where I live, we do get, you know, ice and snow, and I think that will make this car truly usable throughout the winter. You might get people that would say 26,500 is a lot to spend on a 996. This has 25,000 miles on from an OPC. It's not a Porsche certified used car, but nevertheless, you know, you get for quality you pay a little bit more, and I was ready to do that. However, what I would say is, what else can you get that puts a smile on your face like this does as you walk up to it every day? The pedigree, the power, the style for around this type of money. There's nothing close to it. Even other 911s, you know, if I went for the model before this, the 993 variant of 911, you know, if you go on Auto Trader today, as I did, the cheapest 993 you will find is one with 174,000 miles on for $32,000. And if you look at the model after this, the 997 with the round headlights, what you'll find is, unless you're prepared to spend something like 35 grand, you're not going to get a lot of choice. And even at 35 grand, a lot of those are going to be convertibles, which is nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, a convertible would be a very, very nice car to own. But I wanted a coupe, and you know, that's what I ended up buying, and why 26.5 grand to me feels like I stole it. So that's how I did the deal. So what have I bought, and what's it like? Well, there's actually quite a good website called vinanalytics.com. If you put your VIN into that website, it'll bring up all the options that the car was originally ordered with and its original price. And here's mine. And you can see that it's reasonably, if not lavishly, optioned. For me, it ticks all the boxes. I've got heated seats, which when you live in Connecticut, again, cold winters, maybe it's because I'm getting old, that's you know, I need heated seats. But also it's got the supple leather just to make journeys a bit more comfortable. The seats are powered and memory operated. So I feel that it's really well appointed. There's also a pretty reasonable stereo in it, What a lot of people do is take this air conditioning unit and move it down to the lower slot down here, and then what that does is frees up this area here for a double size screen, which you can buy and have fitted, and that'll give you Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, that kind of thing. Right now I've got this device here, which I got off Amazon, which just speaks to the radio and also speaks to my phone through Bluetooth, so I can listen to my directions or listen to my music through the existing stereo, which suits me fine for right now. And the seats in the rear are not totally useless. In fact, there's a reasonable amount of space in the back here. My 12-year-old son Barney can fit in here. He's not very comfortable, I have to say, but for short journeys he can get in there and just about get his knees in. Also, the backs of the seats fold forward, so if you do want to get a couple of sets of golf clubs in, they'll go in and fit in there. But it's not built as a proper four-seater, far from it, but you can, for short journeys, make do. And on the subject of luggage, remember the engine is in the back, not the front, so your main space for luggage is in the front, which to access, push this little button here. What that then does is allow you to lift up the flap here, and that is your main luggage space. It's not huge, especially with the space saver tyre in there, but you can get some good amount of luggage in there actually, especially if there's only two of you in the car. You'll be fine. However, beware, if you run out of battery or run out of power, you will not be able to open the trunk lid. And guess where the battery is? Yep, that's it, just there, underneath the trunk lid, which opens electrically, which I found absolutely hilarious. When you read the manual, it says the lid cannot be opened from the inside if the battery is disconnected or empty. Safety reasons therefore require that you unscrew the latch striker of the lid lock if you plan to put the vehicle out of option for an extended period. Please consult your authorized Porsche dealer. They will advise you about the necessary measures. So, my advice, don't run out of power. Out back there really isn't very much to see. You pull the switch, which is behind the trunk lid switch, and it shows you not much. That suits me because I'm not much of a mechanic. So let's take it out for a spin and see what it's like out on the road. So, first impressions of the 996, the Porsche 911 996 Carrera 2. So, the first impressions are you're sitting quite low. It's a low car. It still gives you the opportunity of seeing the lovely fenders, wings as we call them in the UK, sitting out there on the front of the car. It is a small car. It tends to wrap itself around you. It's not a big car by any stretch, but it is a comfortable car. The seats, the supple leather seats, are doing their job quite nicely. And you'll hear people complain about the Tiptronic gearbox. I think people do that because of what it is not rather than what it is. It is not one of those dual clutch gearbox. This is a standard automatic gearbox. It hangs onto the gears a bit more when you're pressing on, which is helpful. It's also got switches on the steering wheel that you can manually change the gears with, but it's not quite as fast, but neither that is it slow either. It's not a bad automatic gearbox. In fact, I would say it's a very good automatic gearbox. If you want a dual clutch gearbox in a Porsche, then you've got to go to a 997, and not one of the early 997s either. You've got to go to a 2009 997 before you get a proper double clutch gearbox. So if you're looking for an automatic 911 in a 996 variety. I would buy it for what it is, which is a really good automatic gearbox. You will either love automatic gearboxes or need automatic gearboxes, or you'll go and buy a manual. And off the line, it's pretty quick, even by today's standards. So you see, it's pretty fast enough for my money. You know, 315 horsepower, still goes pretty quick. It's only, I think, 2,900 pounds in weight. The Golf that I had before this was 3,000 pounds and 220 horsepower. So in terms of my mission to go a little bit faster for my money, get a bigger bang for my buck, I'm really achieving it with this and quite happy about it. The turn-in is excellent. The engine in the back really helps that. There's not much weight over the front wheels, and when you are turning into bends, it's really good. Its real strong suit, I have to say, is its ride. The Golf, as I said, the Golf GTI, there's not much that would keep up with that when pressing on. This absolutely would, but what it also does is it eliminates all those crashy bumps from the hardness of the ride. This is much more a sophisticated ride, and you can see that the Porsche engineers have really spent some money here getting this right. So that's my review of my own 911. To be honest, look, I'm really thrilled with it. I think it's a super car. The world currently is going to hell in a handcart, and for less than $30,000 you can get into a Porsche 911, and not just any Porsche 911, a good one. What's not to like about that? So look, I hope you enjoyed the film. Give me a like if you did, and consider subscribing, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.